I would equate it to this. Like, if you're right-handed and then you're forced to use your left hand for everything, that's how it feels. Like, it's really tough to describe gender dysphoria to someone who has never experienced it. And I think that's probably the best way to describe it. You're being forced to do something that's uncomfortable in every single respect.
Okay, first of all, hi everybody. Welcome to the Tea Girls podcast. We are two moderate trans women. We are kikiing, having a good time, talking about politics, crazy trans stuff, etc., etc. My name is Nalea, and this is my lovely co-host. Dani, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Dani from Boston, Massachusetts. Some things about me. I love leg day and martinis. And Nalia, what were we just talking about for lunch? What are you getting for lunch?
Okay, so I am unfortunately admitting to loving Subway. I have since I was a young man. And believe it or not, I am not a biological woman. And I always get the 6-inch teriyaki chicken with sweet onion. My God, does it hit my spots. And I always get it with it's like the bread with like the cheese all over the top. But I was just telling Dani, I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna get it today because it's pool season in Arizona. Like, I need to stop fucking around and lose those like last 2 pounds and just like hurry up and get snatched. Like, it's within grasp. I just have to be very intentional and just like eat right. Just 2 more weeks and I'll be like totally ready to go. Are you like beach ready?
I'm almost beach ready, so I think I need probably lose like 5 more pounds to my goal weight. Um, but my shape is coming in pretty good so far, so I'm very happy with the progress. I've lost like 14, 15 pounds, so yeah, lost a lot.
You've lost 14 pounds. So when did you gain all that weight and how?
So I put on all the weight post Columbia. So we went to Columbia in September. And when I came back, I had multiple surgeries. So not being able to exercise, I typically take off probably like 4 to 6 weeks from the gym after a surgery. And I had surgery in October and November, and then the holidays. Like, for those who don't know, I'm pretty good at cooking. And then I got into baking this year too. So I was fucking up that kitchen every week, just pumping out the dishes, and they were good. They were good. Um, so yeah, I feel like it's so much more difficult to lose weight during the winter too. Do you have that problem, or is it just me?
Oh, totally. No, totally, because you're staying in, you are doing things like baking, you're drinking the eggnog. I mean, from like November all the way to October, it's like holiday weight happening. Like, it's just a whole thing.
It's just like the seasonal depression kind of thing too. Like, I don't know how it gets over there in AZ, but here, like, we only get a few hours of sunlight, and it's rough. And like, you don't want to do anything. It feels like 10 p.m. when it's 4 p.m.
Arizona honestly feels like heaven on earth in winter. I'm not gonna lie. I enjoy Arizona winter so much. It's so sunny and beautiful. But I think with the holidays going, it's like it's tough for everybody. And then on top of that, like in Arizona, you're drinking and partying as much as you were over the summer. So the impetus to gain weight is just always there, but it is a little bit weird to go to the pool during the summer. So interesting stuff. People are not beach ready in winter typically. They're just kind of like drinking and doing their thing, and then summer comes around and everybody's at the pool constantly. Um, anyways, I'm excited to talk about some of our main segments today. There's a lot of interesting stuff that is happening in the news. Um, did you hear about what Governor Abbott said to the young conservatives of Texas?
I'm sure it's something that's outstanding and inspirational. Why don't you read it to me?
Yeah, so For those of you guys who are wondering, Governor Abbott is the governor of Texas. He was talking to young conservatives, and of course, he was talking about transgender people. So he's saying up the street from where we are right now is Lewisville, Texas. In Lewisville, Texas, in high school recently, as in just a month ago, they had a high school teacher who was a man who would go to school dressed as a woman in a dress, high heels, makeup. Now, what do you think is going through the mind of the students in that classroom? This type of behavior is not okay. And this type of behavior is the behavior that we want to make sure we end in the state of Texas. So basically, he is coming for a transgender woman's livelihood in school. What are your thoughts on that?
What were the students thinking? Obviously depends on the grade, but they were probably happy for the teacher. That the teacher's living their life, and school continues. That's it. I think that's what the kids thought, honestly, Governor Abbott. But yeah, it's a culture war thing. Like we've talked about this. It's a dead horse at this point. Like these people just don't think that trans people should exist in general in mainstream society. And they will not stop until they can get that agenda across the finish line. And I mean, you see it here with Abbott. He's just they're saying the quiet part out loud now, which is crazy. Like, and it all started with Michael Knowles saying that he wants to eradicate transgenderism from society. Like, since then, like, it's like, yeah, we need to get rid of trans people. That's how they're talking, and that's what they want to do.
Yeah, it really bothers some people that transgender people have achieved a certain status in societies. We have normal jobs. A lot of us are very outspoken and out loud on the internet. There's quite a few transgender celebrities like Hunter Schafer that are reaching new heights in society. And I think that is very, very threatening for a lot of people. And their goal is to eradicate us from public life. And if the consequence of that is us going back into a society where we're marginalized and we're suffering, that's what they want. And it's really, really sad. I think that, a lot of people who are saying it's just about protecting the kids or whatever, it's bullshit. Because at this point, they're now coming after teachers. They're coming after people's livelihoods. Kids don't care about whether people are transgender, and they especially didn't care 3-4 years ago. Now that conservatives are waging this war against transgender people, now all of a sudden it's okay to bully us again. And that was created by this manufactured culture war. So it really, really angers me, and it shows us what some Republicans are going to do in the next coming years. But I don't think anti-trans issues are winning issues. I read this stat that said, 70% of the candidates that were suggested by Moms for Liberty, so anti-trans organization, basically, failed in achieving election or re-election. So I don't know if transgender issues are something that's going to help them consolidate their power. It's certainly a popular talking point, but I just don't see it as effective. What do you think?
It's definitely not effective. I mean, we've seen it just not with Moms for Liberty, but across a lot of elections. And the majority of Americans think that trans people should have access to care. Just going back to the kids thing, it's obviously not about the kids when we are seeing in state legislatures that they're pushing the age to access gender affirming care up to 25 and hiding behind the guise of, oh, the brain isn't fully developed. Yes, it is. And you have the right to access that care. That is between the doctor, the patient, and if they're under 18, the guardian as well. And it needs to stop there, full stop. Like, government should not be interfering with that. And I think next legislative session we'll probably see more attempts to keep banning up to 25. But where does that end? It's going to be a ban on all care for all adults. That's where it's going to end. That's what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree. That the first step that they want is for us to be extremely visible so they could target us and make us suffer. And then the next step is eradicate us completely. And specifically, who is responsible for this are the evangelicals in the country. That's who is trying to get rid of us. And that's the extremist ideology that is infecting, I feel like, a lot of moderate Christians and the right wing. And I want everybody who's listening to this, especially if they're not transgender, to know that whoever those groups of people hate, you're next on the list. So that's Jewish people, that is women, that is certain, Catholics to some extent. There's a whole host of people, Muslims for sure, a whole host of people that are not in their ideal ethno state, so to speak, and they're coming for you next. So we might as well just start the fight right now and continue going. I don't think this is the profitable way for them to proceed, but we have to be aware of what these people are doing and what they're doing. And I think a lot of our work, Dani and I's work, is about neutralizing the threat of that and reacting as a community in a way that neutralizes the negative arguments against us. I mean, we've been criticized a lot for criticizing the slogan "trans women are women" or trans women are biological women. Part of our intention in doing those things is getting moderates to see from our perspective and to back us up. They can't back us up if the starting point of our engagement with them is, oh, you're delusional and saying things that I don't think are true. So big picture about what we're saying and why, I would say that's it. Do you have anything to add to that, Dani?
Yeah, I mean, so to your point where Alliance Defending Freedom is the evangelical group, and they have been a juggernaut since this for 70 years now. So obviously trans people were not at the forefront of the culture war 50, 60, 70 years ago, but they are now. So it doesn't stop with trans people. This is just one of the stops along the train route, and they're going to keep coming until they have total control. That's what it is all about, control. And they won't stop until they have it.
Yeah. And to add to that, I mean, in this country, in the USA, we might not feel very lucky about this, but we have one political party's backing right now. And in another episode, we're going to talk about what's happening in the UK, basically. And the UK doesn't have a major political party backing transgender people. So the only way that we can maintain that is if we participate in the political process and support the party that is backing us. So when it comes down to November and local and the general election, we got to make sure that we vote blue. It's extremely important because if Joe Biden doesn't win in 2024 and we lose a bunch of seats in the House and Senate and we have more Republican governors, it's going to get worse than it already is. The goal is to eradicate transgender people from public life. We can't say that enough. So be aware and do your part in stopping that from happening. Speaking of that, I actually wanted to dive in a little bit deeper into this conversation about respectability versus authenticity and show you a really bizarre interview that I saw between a non-binary person and a newscaster in the UK. So give me a second. I'm going to share my screen and show that to you.
Good afternoon, Julia. You know my pronouns are they, them. How are you doing?
Yeah. Thank you for telling me your pronouns. I use correct grammar. So the only thing I would need to refer you to is to your face would be you. But I'm not being rude. You can choose your pronouns. You can choose what you want to call yourself, but you don't get to require me to use incorrect grammar and factually incorrect things. You're not a plural. You're a one person, and you're a female person. So I will use she and her. Thank you very much.
Do what you like, I guess.
Well, there you are. You didn't need to tell me then, did you?
Maybe I'm just making sure people know in case they're watching and they want to refer to me respectfully.
Is it disrespectful for me to use correct factual grammar?
It's not incorrect or unfactual grammar to use singular they, them pronouns for an individual.
All right, Dani, I'm going to let you react to that first.
that is so unprofessional, I think. And I don't know what news station this is, but it doesn't seem like their main priority is to get the news across in an objective way. It's to create a spectacle and a show. That's what I got from that clip. And I think that, like we were just talking about, how there's no political party supporting trans people in the UK. Like, I wonder if this is common practice over there. I don't know. We need our UK buddies to let us know.
Yeah, I thought that was extremely unprofessional. It is ironic to me that somebody who looks like Heath Ledger in a wig would even try that with a transgender person. I certainly wouldn't have if I looked like that. But what I will say is I do not like the hostess at all. And I feel really, really bad for the non-binary person that was on the show on there to talk about the cast review. But I want that to be shown to people who are transgender and interfacing with unfriendly people, because if you come to those spaces and don't read the room, that's the type of pushback you're going to get. You know, I'm somebody who lives in a red state. When I engage with people on transgender issues, you have to engage with them in such a way that brings them over to your side or combats them effectively. I think this person came into that interview immediately correcting this person on pronouns. And the thing is, this person clearly is not friendly towards pronouns. So I wouldn't have even gone there. I would have been like, let's just talk about the issues. Here's the deal. You know, being transgender is about self-expression, and you know, the state is trying to limit that. What's next? What are they going to try to limit next? That is a message that I think is far more impactful. And so for everybody who is thinking about how to navigate themselves in unfriendly spaces, I think there's a lesson to be learned there.
I can see how maybe her initial approach was not the best, but I thought she had a pretty good response to the newscaster. I thought that was very calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah. And she was great the entire time. The other woman was smug and looked nasty, and she was, you know, lauded by some, dragged by others. I think we just need to get back to the point where we're interfacing with each other with a level of respect. But I think if you're a transgender person that is in these spaces, you know, there's some challenges ahead of us for sure. Next thing I have to show you is a video by a very interesting trans woman named Kelly Cadigan.
Oh my God.
I know, I'm so sorry, girl. So let me open that one up. Give me 1 second.
Queen Grifter.
She deleted she deleted the video. Never mind.
Then this gives us a good opportunity to just talk about Kelly, because she is the ultimate flip-flopper and the ultimate grifter.
I agree.
She should not be commenting on these issues whatsoever. She can't pick a side. And advice to Kelly: stop reading the comments, pick a side, formulate an opinion, and get behind it. That's it.
Well, in the video, she was basically saying that trans women, she calls them homosexual transsexual. So she calls herself a gay man and a transsexual. And she says and implies that transgender women who are interested in other women are autogynephiles. And so I wanted you to react to that because you're bisexual and transgender. Obviously, that's an extremely disrespectful take. It is a stupid take at that. How much of a pick-me can you be? This woman actually got on her own TikTok after she got canceled by both sides and said that she was hoping that the Daily Wire would add her as a correspondent. As fucking if in your wildest dreams. I think she is, you know, just shameful. Like, get it together and have a backbone. At least some of the other transgender conservatives in this industry will stand on business. She is a little flip-flopper, and I have zero respect for her.
Yeah, zero respect for Kelly. So basically, she's saying there's two types of trans women, right? So AGPs, and then trans women who live their lives as gay men.
Yeah, homosexual, transsexual, and AGPs is what she was saying.
Bi trans women don't exist. Got it. She's a fucking
Exactly.
idiot. Like, it really just comes down to
Yeah.
comes down to that.
She's so cringe, and just reading the comments under her comment section, I'm like, oh my god, your audience are bitter middle-aged turfs. Like, that's who you're appealing to. I hope you have fun with that. For whatever amount of money that puts in your pocket. I'm sure she can't sleep at night with that. I just couldn't do that, and yeah, not a big fan of hers at all. Like, she needs to grow up. I think she will grow up someday, but I can't.
It's like, man, like, you can try and toe the line, right? And I think that's where we are. We're somewhere in the middle, and we get shade from both sides. But the thing is, we don't flip-flop. We are very consistent with what we're saying, and you can't get anyone to back you up if you're just flip-flopping every single time that you get shade on the internet. And that is what Kelly is known for.
Yeah. I think our thing is, how do we navigate what's actually happening in society in an effective way? That's our thing. Like, for people who want to integrate into society, who want better outcomes, who knows that there isn't going to be a utopia anytime soon, how do we navigate these conversations in an effective way? So that is devoid of, some of the stuff that she's doing. She's trying to fit in with a side of the aisle that will not accept her anytime soon. Maybe in 10 years, maybe in 20, but not anytime soon. So did you hear about the transgender potential mass shooter in Maryland?
I did not. So there's a trans shooter.
Yeah. So it's a female to male 18-year-old kid. Looks like transitioned hormonally or whatever. And he didn't shoot anybody yet. He got caught prior to it. And now right-wing media outlets are using that to disparage transgender people again, just like after that shooting in Tennessee. I think it's a laughable tactic. I think it's insincere. I think that it's ineffective, but it grates my nerves nonetheless. I remember Ben Shapiro a year ago when the Tennessee shooter came out said, I would support gun control for transgender people or people with mental illness. He wants people like transgender people to not have guns, which I thought was rage bait and just absolutely asinine. What goes through your head when you see things like transgender shooters on the news?
Tucker Carlson had the same opinion. He did a whole segment on it where he said trans people shouldn't own guns, which is it's a stupid take. It's a dumb take. Again, they will do anything to strip rights away from trans people.
Yeah, I think this stuff is evil because they know it's bullshit when they're saying it.
Oh, 100%. And if you believe in the Second Amendment, then it needs to be, obviously we're not going to give guns to terrorists and other categories, but like trans people don't fall into that category. Like, just because you disagree with someone's lifestyle and choices does not mean that they shouldn't own a gun.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I looked at the numbers, and one of the sources I read says in 2018 to 2023, about 2,914 mass shooters in general were cisgender. How many of those were non-cisgender in those same 5 years? 3. And if you just follow the math, transgender people are 2% of the population at most. Somebody is going to end up being transgender and also a shooter, but it's not a reflection of any sort of moral failing on our part. Also, if you're going to discriminate based on these stats at all, it would behoove you to know 80% of mass shooters are white. So what do? Do we ban white people from having guns? Absolutely not. That doesn't make sense. It's a reflection of the population in general. That's just how our demographics look. So to target transgender people as a result of that, or even making this about transgender people, is in bad faith, and it's completely stupid, and it's a talking point that people who are not genuine use against us, and it drives me crazy. But I don't know if people buy into this bullshit or not. I hope not.
I think the only people who would buy into that are the regular viewers of Libs of TikTok. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what I saw this on.
Who have an American flag and Trump as their little avatars on X. Those are the people who buy into this. Other than that, I think anyone is really taking that seriously.
So the Americans with the highest IQ and all of their teeth not missing from their mouths, and the ones that don't sleep with underage people or minors. Got it. Okay. Moving on. I wanted to talk to you about something that I've been like thinking about a lot, and that is my experiences like living as a guy versus my experiences living as a woman. I have so many different thoughts about that. And one of the thoughts that I have about that, you know, lends to my fascination with the red pill community, because their premise is, if I'm completely like kind about it, their premise is it's actually really hard to be a guy, and we're struggling with this, and these are the reasons why. That's like kind of how they connect to people. They use misogyny as one of the tools, but my life, I feel, was harder, or rather it felt harder when I was a guy. I don't think it was objectively harder, but it felt harder to me as a guy. I'm curious as to whether you feel the same way.
I'm so happy we're talking about this topic. I 100% feel the same way. And I do think when it comes to certain things, it is difficult for men, and we're not giving enough credence to that. So I'm excited to talk about this topic. Um, where should we start?
I like to start about like the expectations that are put on men, especially like little boys. I always found them to be extremely oppressive. So, one of the things that was different about me growing up is that I've always been super feminine. But of course, this feminine person came in a boy's package, basically. And I think there's a fundamental difference between how boys are policed for their expression versus girls. When you see a little girl and she decides to cut her hair short and play sports with the boys, she's called a tomboy. She might be made fun of by other girls a little bit, but people by and large accept her. Whereas I feel like when I was a girly little boy playing with dolls, my parents were getting on me, the kids in the neighborhood were getting on me. I was being bullied like relentlessly as a kid for being feminine. And I just remember being like 4 years old playing with Barbies and like acting like the mom when we were all playing house. And my mom pulls me aside and she goes, "Don't ever do that again. That is for girls." And I'm like, what the fuck? My girlfriends never get in trouble. Even at that age, I knew that they never got in trouble for that sort of thing. And it really, really bugged me. Did you have any sort of like feminine expression things that you were doing as a kid?
So I remember this one time. This had to be probably like 90, 95, 96. So I was probably around like 5 or 6. And there was a pink toothbrush, and I asked my mom for that toothbrush. But that's like the only instance that I can think of, like specifically that toothbrush. Um, and, you know, maybe it's like I can't think of anything good because it was just common practice. I had like a lot of my cousins are all like 5 years older than me, and they're all female. So like obviously that's going to have a much different influence than if you're constantly surrounded by like masculine things all the time. So I like growing up in a religious household too, I felt so much pressure to conform. And always, even from a very young age, I felt like I was trying to live up to other people's narratives and standards and not my own. And I was never really truly able to express myself. So I was anxious even from a young age about that. But the toothbrush is the thing that like sticks out in my mind the most. Um, and
So what happened when you asked for the pink toothbrush?
I don't even remember. That's the thing. Like I really don't have a lot of memories from as a child. Um, and I really didn't start expressing that until I got to high school, but it was in secret, you know? And I've had gender dysphoria probably since I was like 10 or 11, but I still kept it bottled inside because of the pressure to conform to others' ideas of what they thought a teenage boy should be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also had, gender dysphoria for a very long time as a kid, and I just like what was like tragic about the entire thing is that I could not suppress my femininity as hard as I tried. Like I tried so hard. I was like walking differently, talking differently, having these like different interests and stuff like that. And it's interesting that the kids in the neighborhood especially went so hard in policing the way that I was expressing myself. I think I associate a lot of being a boy with that sort of harsh masculine oppression. And the thing is, it's not just me. Like it's like if a little boy expresses interest in wearing nail polish or they watch a girly show or whatever, even as adults, when men show any sort of girly inclination, they get made fun of for it for the most
Mhm.
part. I mean, where it takes a lifelong attempt to get rid of that. And it's just not the same when you're living as a woman. Women don't have the same expectations or policing of you, I feel.
Yeah, you are able to have more expression, and expression is free when you're a woman compared to being a man. 100% agree.
I think another interesting, like speaking of this, in some aspects, like the self expression of your body, like women are much more open to, but I think women are a lot more judgmental when it comes to like sexual expression. So I feel like if a girl is too loose, for example, the women around her are going to judge her, not like her, because I think that's like a little bit mate competition, a little bit like there's like a thing about like, well, if you sleep with this guy too early, then you're like, I don't know. I don't know how to articulate it. It's almost like you're degrading the collective bargaining ability of women who are interested in getting a relationship. If you're like a loosey goosey woman, and I've never experienced that as a male. There's just like a lot more slut shaming when you're a woman, even for transgender women. It's kind of weird. Like, do you have any experiences with slut shaming?
Uh, no, I can't say that I have had that, but um, I definitely like dating as a man and a woman. Like, I'm more cognizant of like, okay, like trying to hold off on sex, like only being a few dates in, compared to like when I was dating as a guy, it would be like, okay, like we're gonna hook up on the first date. And like that was like it happened like multiple times. So now I try to refrain from that type of behavior.
Yeah, I fully agree. And that's you reacting to the stigma of being sexually open, basically, as a woman. That's exactly what that is. Like, even though somebody hasn't come and brought like a pitchfork to you, that doesn't change anything. The other thing I'm noticing, I've been open about getting a boob job. I can tell you about that. I went to my first consultation on Monday and it was great. But I've been talking to my girlfriends and my guy friends about boob jobs, and the guys are all like, oh yeah, get them really big, get them as big as you want, like you're going to be sickening or that's going to be sexy, whatever. They'll say stuff like that. Every single girl has been like, what size are you going to get them? And I've been like, a C. And they've been like, okay, good, not too big for your frame. And so I've had a lot of thoughts about that. I think most of that is coming from, we do not want you to look like a freak, basically, or we don't want you to look disproportionate, but it just shows me how like women view like the bimbo type of woman. Like, again, it's like the kind of slut shaming, like this is way too much. You look crazy. I've never heard a man make a comment like that. So it's a woman only thing. I think most of it is concern for a friend, right? Protecting a friend from judgment. I'm also wondering, I'm like, when women judge other women with big boob jobs, is there some sort of like mate competition thing that's going on in their head where they're feeling like they got to put the lady with the big boobs down?
Yeah, my first thought was that like it's coming from a good place, but there has to be like some fraction of a percent that like, okay, this is a little bit of competition, especially because like you are a very pretty woman too, so like that would be competition. I would think that a lot of women see you as competition out there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe none of those friends definitely don't like. I would like to think that. But I think that the idea of a woman jumping around with big tits and getting attention from men, I think that unsettles a lot of people. And yeah, it's just women keep other women in check for that sort of thing. Again, it's not present for men. Men do it in other ways, right? Men go, if somebody's too muscular, they accuse the other person of not being natty, right? Like that's like how they project their
Yep.
shadows. So we're all kind of running in this rat race, and it's certainly interesting. What do you think? Like, how do you think judgment from women is different than how men judge men?
I feel like when men judge men, it's it's not as serious. I don't know if serious is the right word. I feel like they don't take as much into consideration and are like really thinking it through. I think it's just like, okay, they they have an issue and then they kind of get over it, but like I was never able to think like that, you know what I mean? Like cuz I feel like I had a very emotional and like I have a lot of feelings in this little heart of mine. So, um yeah, I was never able to like relate to that thought process where it's just like yeah, okay, like we have an issue and we'll never talk about it again and we'll get over it. I feel like that's kind of how they judge each other. Like they most of the time they won't even talk about it. Where like women, I think it's much more out in the open. And you can like women are much more in tune with their emotions and intuition and what's going on around them. And I think that's the biggest difference when it comes to judgment, disagreements, etc.
Yeah, I feel like men really are really harsh to other men that are not friends with them, but with their friends, they're like, they don't talk about their emotions much. They're not that deep, but they're pretty nice to their friends. I think with women, like within friend groups, like there's a lot more harsh judgment, um, and a lot of like casual attacks from people that you're friends with. Not by and large, but I noticed like just being a part of a girl group, it's like the dynamic is so different than being in a part of a group of gay guys or even straight guys. Like it's really interesting. And I don't know, I like the last couple of weeks for me, especially online and us doing this podcast together, has really given me a view about the differences between how transgender women interact with each other versus biological cisgender women. What observations have you made about this stuff?
When I was out last night, I was actually talking to a friend about this. I think trans women who disagree with other trans women are the most vicious people on the internet. Like, bar none. I think they are by far the most vicious. Where I don't think like cisgender women, like, I don't, yes, cisgender women can be vicious online, but like, oh my God, the shit that people have said to us and like I've seen said to other trans women by trans women, like it's pretty bad. Like it's pretty bad. And they're always the loudest in the room. That's the thing. They're always the loudest.
Yeah, I I fully agree with you. I think that for trans women, anytime you encounter another trans woman, you're judging her based on realness, first and foremost. I think a lot of that is happening. Or like income, or, do you live the American dream? I think that's how transgender women look at other women. Like how closely in proximity are you to normalcy, and how much realness are you serving? And I think there's a lot of, like, I know that, you know, uh, really, really passable trans women look down upon super clocky women. And I know people who are super clocky, um, they envy the passable women quite a bit. And then there's all of these like shades in between. And, the fact of the matter is, nobody should feel lesser or more than anybody based on how they look. Really, we should all internalize that. Easier said than done, but that's the reality. But I think that because we're already a part of a discriminated against group, the stakes of all of these things feel so much higher. And so that's where all the viciousness comes from. I think that, like, if you and I, for example, if we say something and it triggers somebody who's not confident about their own transition or where they're at right now, they go super hard putting all of that wrath and envy and all that stuff on us instead of fixing the problem that's going to make them feel better. And so I think that's really interesting. And I try to check myself from doing the same thing, because I'm on a journey too. I'm nowhere close to finish with my journey, but I don't want to lash out at people that are either lower or higher than me.
No, definitely not. What instances have you seen where passable trans women have lashed out at clocky trans women?
I think I don't. I'm not 1,000% sure that I haven't done that. And I think about that a lot. I was smoking yesterday. I was like, okay, like to what extent is publicly criticizing another transgender person, especially if they are not close in the proximity to normalcy, to what extent is that self-loathing? I was thinking about that question last night, because part of me is like, well, maybe I shouldn't do that because, this person is already dealing through whatever, XYZ, to be a nice person. But the reason I add to the discourse is I'm trying to discourage people from doing things that I think are hurting us ultimately. For example, the person who went into the Planet Fitness women's bathroom and made national news. I don't think it's okay for that to happen, and I don't think anybody should be doing that. So I'm talking about it on a public platform so other people get the signal that that's not okay. So it's very intentional, right? But I think that a lot of us who are further along in our transition take a lot of digs at girls that are not, and sometimes it's coming from a good place, sometimes it's not coming from a good place. And I think there's a lot of people with platforms. Kelly Cadigan, we were just talking about her earlier. She's constantly attacking people who don't pass, and I think some of the attacks are in bad faith. What about you?
There's definitely creators out there who have the attacks in bad faith. It's tough to like distinguish which are which though, because social media is not reality. It's not reality. And I think that's why our long form discussions so much more is because our real opinions are able to shine through. And the audience is able to get a better sense of our personality and our actual viewpoints. You know, that's the first thing that came to mind, the Planet Fitness fiasco. Like, we were called transphobic for saying that that person should not be in the women's locker room. And I genuinely don't think it's transphobic to say that if a trans woman is shaving her face in a women's locker room and fully presenting male, that that person shouldn't be in the women's locker room. I genuinely don't think that's transphobic. But the left of the trans caucus obviously branded us as transphobic. So there's some disconnect there. And I'm like actually curious what percent of this trans group that we're in thinks that we're transphobic for saying that. Like, the comments were a lot different on Eden's video that she made about it compared to the video he made about it. And I'm sure that's, audience reach, etc. But yeah, I feel like a lot of people in general think that that person shouldn't be in the women's locker room, and it's really only trans women who are defending that.
Yeah, I think it's indefensible. I don't feel bad about saying it, and people can feel however they want. And I think that, when I said it with a lot of spice because that's how I genuinely feel. And sometimes I understand that's triggering for people, but life's hard. Get a helmet. We need to toughen up. That's another thing that I want us to think about. In my life, I want to, within the next 10 years, I want to make a shit ton of money. I want to be very successful in my career. I want to look a certain way. I want to have the guy of my dreams, family of my dreams, all of that stuff. You cannot do all of those things without being ultra real about where you're at right now and mapping your way forward. And I want more of us to do that, because the era in society where people are being celebrated for being diverse, where people are celebrated for being able to articulate the ways that they're victimized, that era is coming to a close. There's a lot of signs around us that are showing that era is coming to a close. DEI is being divested from in many, many different aspects of society. So we need to take the cue and be like, okay, cool. How do we as a community move forward in a way that advances our place in society rather than detracts it? And so for me, part of that conversation is being tough like our predecessors before us were. I think, millennial and Gen Z trans women are a little bit coddled because this was the best possible time for us to be trans. Now we're going backwards. We got to toughen up.
Yeah, I agree with that. Is there anything that will bring the different factions of the trans community together?
I think that having like transgender stories from a moderate perspective, like having a really compelling transgender leader or story to connect us all, is going to help us with that. So having the right person in the right place telling our story is going to soften everybody up and bring us closer to the middle. I think that that's going to be our path forward.
How does that happen though, when the left keeps going further to the left and the right keeps going further to the right, where someone in the middle is now considered a far-right Nazi? Do you see the point I'm getting at? because they've moved so much further to the left now that anything in the middle seems like it's way on the right.
So here's what I'll say about that. I'm reading The 50th Law by Robert Greene right now, and he talks a little bit about this. He was saying that there are basically ages of reason and there's ages of spectacle. And when conditions are really harsh, that's when people become the most practical. But when people are coddled, they tend to be more intellectually loose and all over the place. And so I think that some people will unfortunately have to learn when things get really hard. I don't know how to soften that blow. But what he also says is you can't force people to get out of the vibe. All you can do is capitalize off of knowing the situation for exactly what it is. And my hope for everybody who's listening to this podcast is that you guys are like-minded like us, that you guys are moderate and you guys want to succeed in life. It doesn't matter what the rest of the trans community is doing. We could do whatever we want to make change, but you have to be successful for yourself. You owe it to yourself to be happy and successful and work hard and, live your dreams. So do that. And maybe there's going to be enough of us doing it where we inspire other people. That's all we can hope for. But I'm with Robert Greene on this one.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I mean, he's a fantastic author. He makes so many good points, and his books are great. But yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like that tribe mentality where like we're gonna see our niche form more and more as we can with this. And I mean, you and I are very like-minded in the sense that you need to work hard and achieve things that you did not think were once possible for yourself. Like you need to do that for you. And that's one of the meanings of life. And, one of the things that that's a duty and obligation that you have to yourself.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, so we have a few questions today to answer for the girls. And so I'm going to ask you the first one. It's about gender dysphoria. So the question is, when did the gender dysphoria start? If it started at all, I do believe that dysphoria is not always present. When did you first start feeling like you weren't supposed to be born as your sex? And how does gender dysphoria feel?
It hit me really hard when I was 10, 11. Like when I just mentioned that previously in our previous segment there. But yeah, like 10, 11, 12. And like it was like an intense distress. And yeah, I don't think it's always present, but like it's always lying under the surface. It always is there. But for me, it like really made itself known in waves. But it was always there. Um, I would equate it to this: like if you're right-handed and then you're forced to use your left hand for everything, that's how it feels. Like it's really tough to describe gender dysphoria to someone who has never experienced it. And I think that's probably the best way to describe it. You're being forced to do something that's uncomfortable in every single respect.
I'm gagged by you just saying that. I'm blown away. I have never heard it put so succinctly. Like I'm experiencing chills and explosions all over my body. So I'm really gagged by that because that's like so poignant and well said. For me, I knew since I was 4 or 5 that I was supposed to be a girl. I used to watch this cartoon named Sailor Moon, and they used to do these like little transformations. It's like a little anime that's still popular now. And I was like, oh yeah, someday something's gonna happen like that, and I'm just gonna turn into a girl. And obviously, I didn't until I was 28. So it is an instinct. I think that gender dysphoria, like deeply and truly, is a pull from your soul telling you that you're meant to live life as a woman. And so regardless of whether there were phases in my life where I was happy or content, I always felt that pull and I resisted it for a long time. It gets exacerbated with your mind. So I'm a big presence meditation type of person. I feel like your mind observes the gender dysphoria and it becomes extremely agitated and stressed and self-loathing. And so a lot of those feelings are what we call gender dysphoria, but they're symptoms of gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is really that pull that you feel to live life as the other sex, and it's very, very strong. In my mid-20s, I felt like I was a sidekick in my own story, and I felt like my life had not truly begun. And the minute I started to present female is the minute my life felt like it began. So, your mind has a lot of effect on how bad your gender dysphoria is, but that pull, if you're transgender, is there from the beginning. And it feels similar to the pull that some people feel to be an artist or in business or whatever. All of those different pulls that you feel that your life is pulling you towards, gender dysphoria is just like that, but it's very, very powerful.
I feel the same exact way where like I wasn't really living my life until I started to transition and I committed to it. That's when my life really began. Because it's when I started living life the way I wanted to, and I wasn't living it in accordance to what I thought other people wanted me. And that's what I think it means by like really living your life. So yeah, I agree 100% with that. Um, that resonates a lot with me.
Okay, great question. Second question is more practical, especially to the girls maybe that like are thinking about starting HRT. The question is, hi, I've been going HRT for almost 2 years now, but sometimes due to funds or just because I can't get myself to stick a needle inside of myself, I miss doses. The longest I've gone without any HRT I started has been 4 weeks, but I'll occasionally not do it for a week or two at a time. Let me get this straight. It's not something I'm doing on purpose. I just can't will myself to fill a syringe and inject myself sometimes. Whenever I miss doses, I notice I get a lot more dysphoric, anxious, my temper gets shorter, and I'm overall not as happy, as confident as I usually feel. I just wanted to ask if anyone else has similar experiences, or if anybody feels like this is them with their HRT. Thoughts?
A few weeks ago, we were talking about mistakes to avoid in your transition. And I said you need to have a roadmap. And the best way to create your roadmap and goals for yourself is to think about the inverse. So if you are going to have an unsuccessful transition, what would you do? And the example I gave was not taking your medicine.
Yep.
So I think this person is experiencing a lot of self-sabotage, and they think that they don't deserve to be happy for, there could be a multitude of reasons, but like you want to, but you can't will yourself to do it. That sounds like self-sabotage, and it sounds like you think that you don't deserve to be happy for whatever reason. And to be clear, like you do deserve to be happy and to live your life to the fullest. And, like I get the money thing, like that's really, really tough to deal with. But when it comes to willing yourself to take your medicine, like you deserve to take it. And just the way that you're going to get over this is to stop self-sabotaging.
That's a really deep thought. I think that's like certainly within the realm of possibility. I would agree. I would say, babe, it's time to switch to pills or the patch. If missing syringes is what the issue is, like let's get on some pills, because I'm not trying to shoot that stuff inside myself. I'm a pills person. They're not as effective, I feel like, as an injection would be, but I'm not trying to get the needles in me. I miss doses, probably like a few times a week, maybe at most, or if I'm on vacation, I'll miss several days. But, I'm sticking to my HRT, especially because I need him for breast growth. So as far as like the actual physical effects, I think within the first like 48 hours, like you'll probably feel more horny than you feel because your testosterone is coming back. You might experience a higher dose of energy. I think over time, your fat starts like distributing back. So it'll move from your hips, I think, to your stomach. You'll start losing fat in your face. Your hair is going to start growing longer. We want to avoid skipping our doses once we're on HRT for sure, because I think a rapid change in your hormonal level day to day is also going to disrupt you hormonally and make you be more emotional. So you're on HRT. If you can afford it, then be on pills and take those more consistently. It's going to be better for you overall. If you can't afford it, it's not going to destroy your transition. I mean, I know plenty of girls that are on, off, on. So,
have you ever thought about doing the patch? Or are you strictly going to stick with the pills?
I think I'm just going to stick with the pills. I'm okay at taking the pills. And I'm like a nootropics person, so I'll take like a ginkgo biloba and then L-carnitine, and I like stuff like that. So I don't have an issue with the pills. I would like the patch more than the injection. I'm not interested in an injection. What about you?
So the majority of my nutrition, I was on the patch. The thing is that you live in Phoenix, I live in Boston, where it's cold most of the time, and we have a very short time for pool season. So it's a little bit different, where like I started doing injections when we went to Colombia for a vacation, because one, I didn't want the pilling when like I'm taking pictures in my bikini, and two, like it's so humid there that like they're gonna fall off. So that's when I started switching to the injections. And a fun fact about me, when I was little, I would pass out every single time I got my blood drawn. So if I can go from passing out, my blood drawn, to injecting myself every week, I know you can do it too.
Okay, fair. Awesome. Okay, we got one more. This is the am I the asshole question. Oh, God, this is so long. Okay, I'm going to try to read it in one fell swoop. Okay. Am I the asshole? Both my husband and I are 37. We have 2 daughters, Kate and Laura. Laura is transgender. 2 months ago, my youngest sister invited us to her wedding, which we accepted. However, last week, our daughter came to our room and told us that she feels like a girl in every single way except for when she looks in the mirror. She admitted that she was depressed and struggled with her confidence. It was midnight, so I told her that we would go shopping tomorrow and see if we can't find some of that confidence. The next day, my husband surprised me with an envelope full of money and told me to take her to the store and he would make it right. To sum it all up, the girls and I had a blast shopping. I took her to the salon and she walked out with a hot pink short bob. We bought a lot of clothes. She picked out a gorgeous black dress for the wedding. We laughed, we cried. My husband then took her on a daddy-daughter date because he's always done that with Kate. We had such an emotional week trying to make sure our girl knows she's safe, loved, and accepted that we hadn't even thought about telling any family. So when we showed up yesterday, everyone was shocked, but they accepted her like we did. No one but my mom made it a big deal, in a good way. My sister's fiance's family hadn't met us, so they didn't know Laura was a boy. None of them acted like they knew. Today, my sister's mother, MOH, her sister-in-law, Christy, texted me telling me I should have made Laura stay at home because it took the spotlight off of Sarah and really hurt her. She said that it was disrespectful to take a trans person to a Christian wedding, knowing Sarah's trying to get right with God. I should have made Laura suck it up and wear a tux for a day. I texted back and told her she is utterly and completely out of line and never to contact me again. Still, I called my sister and she did admit it hurt her feelings, as she felt it made her day less about celebrating her, and her husband and our family was focusing more on Laura. She shared the same sentiment that we shouldn't have came since we were going through a crisis, but she didn't want to hurt Laura, so she didn't say anything. Am I the asshole for taking my newly out trans daughter to my sister's wedding?
First, good for you for telling the maid of honor never to contact you again. Like, very good, very based. I think she's 50-50 the asshole, not the asshole. The big asshole move in this story, not telling your sister who's getting married that her once nephew, now niece, is going to be coming to the wedding in a dress. Like, that seems like a pretty important fact to disclose, right? Like, I think I would want to know that detail. It's just like a little bit of shock. So, like, I was the asshole for not sharing that information with any of the family. The sister who got married is the asshole for saying that the kid should have stayed home and not come to the wedding. That's a pretty asshole-ish thing to do too. So 50-50. I mean, obviously there's a lot of nuance that we don't know in this story. Like the kid just came out a week ago. That seems like a little bit rushed. But the mom said that no one knew that the kid was trans. I don't know. It's split here. Percentage yes, percentage no. What do you think?
I do not think that she's the asshole at all. I think that, she did what we would want every transgender child to have, a completely supportive and loving mother. I think that somebody's transition is not about other people. It's not like the little girl showed up and, fruit roll-ups makeup and try to make a whole spectacle out of it. Yes, it drew attention away from the bride, I guess. I'm kind of against the bridal narcissism complex in this country. Like the business of marriage is a complete ripoff. It doesn't even work out half the time, and we put thousands and thousands of dollars so that a person feels like that they are princess and the center of the universe for a day. I just think that's narcissistic. It's weird. I don't like it. That family's transition wasn't about the sister who was getting married. And if the sister told the bride right up front, the bride being a religious family, they might not have wanted the sister and her family to come. And so at that point, it's like, okay, then if they didn't come, then everybody would be talking about how that family didn't come, and it was weird. So I think it was like a lose-lose situation. I think to bring the child in a tux, I mean, yeah, I guess that could have happened. But I don't know if anybody in that family was thinking about anything other than this like life-altering revelation that came to them that they all dealt with as a family. So I think that this person was not an asshole. I think this was coming to blows at some point, and I commend the parents for being that radically accepting and loving. I've not experienced that in my life, and I wish I had.
Yeah, seems like wearing a tux wasn't even a consideration here. But like, to say that the trans kid took away from the bride, that's such a weak argument. Like, just think about the number of things that can take away attention from the bride. Like, what if the kid was a little bit older and they just came back from Afghanistan or Iraq? Like, that would obviously be taking a lot of attention away from the bride.
Yeah, it's like a self-esteem thing, right? It's like, why is your self-esteem so low that something like that is making you feel bad on your wedding day? Also, how unshakable is your fucking faith that, you know, somebody showing up to your wedding is all of a sudden, you know, hurting your relationship with God? Must not be that great in the first place.
Yeah, I'm curious to know like how Christian wedding, like just religious. That's it. But like I would like to know if someone was going to be transitioning and showing up to my wedding as a different person. But of that, where like yeah, I see your point. Where the sister probably not so much. If Kate's mom told her.
Yeah, I think I can see that. I can see why somebody would want to know, especially if they're in like a religious, you know, whatever. I get that, but I think the mom standing 10 toes down for her daughter, I'm like, get it, girl. I love it. Like, we don't see that often enough. So
She seems like a mama bear. Like when you read the part about her, like, don't ever contact me again. Like, savage move. Like, I can really appreciate that.
I can too. I like that. Cool. All right. Well, it's been a good episode. We are growing on our YouTube. You can find me personally at Tranalytics on TikTok and on Instagram, Transgender Insurance on YouTube. Our shared channel is, I think, was it T Girls Pod, right, Dani?
T like TEA dot girls dot pod. You can find us on
That's on
Instagram,
Instagram.
TikTok, and YouTube. And if you enjoyed this episode, best thing that you can do, hit subscribe on whatever platform you're listening or watching on, and share it with someone that you think would enjoy this as well. That's going to be the best way to help us grow. So thank you everybody for tuning in.
Please, please, please.
And we'll next time.
Awesome.